everybody wants to be heard and seen. And if you have an employee at any level, if they're heard and seen, they will stick and stay.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. To many, these are buzzwords, but they carry a heavy weight when we all bring our authentic selves to work. Welcome to Connecting Business. I'm your host, Christina Munoz. In this episode, we'll take a look at the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DE&I, and the crucial role it plays in your company's culture and your bottom line. June is Pride Month, and what better way to celebrate being your true, authentic self than to focus this episode on DE&I. Today, I'm joined by Blake Woolsey, Chief Communications and Development Officer at Heartland Forward, and Michael McCathern, Executive Director at the John Maxwell Team. Welcome, everybody. It's so wonderful to have you here with us to share your tips and expertise and all the work you do around DE&I. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're so welcome.
Good to be here.
Well, I want to first know a little bit about you guys. I kind of told your titles, but we want to go a lot deeper than just titles. So, Michael, I'm going to start with you. Just tell us a little bit of your background and what it is you do.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, I'm Michael McCathern. I'm an executive director with the John Maxwell Team. And that's just a high level. I love talking to CEOs and helping business owners push past self-limited beliefs. At a high level, I love talking about diversity and inclusion, how to find the awareness and how you can take people and put around the table so nobody's left out. Not only I'm an executive coach, I love bringing out the best in people so they can thrive in any environment.
Absolutely. Very well said. Blake, your turn. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am, as you had shared, I'm with Heartland Forward. We're actually a startup. We celebrated our first anniversary in November. And while we're based in Bentonville, Arkansas, we really focus on the 20 states in the heartland. So as far north as Michigan, as far south as Texas. And our focus is on economic renewal from the lens of workforce development, as well as regional competitiveness, innovation and entrepreneurship, as well as health and wellness. So we are a mighty but small team of 8 in this startup, which is I love because I love the entrepreneurial world and building things. And so I play the dual role of helping communicate about the work that we're doing, this incredible work our economists do. But at the same time, we're a 501c3, which means by federal regulation, we have to raise money, which is where the development side of things comes in, because I am looking for donors, for those small donors, those Pebble Grant kind of gifts, as well as those major gifts, in order to make sure that we're able to focus on that mission of economic renewal. So fun work that we're getting to do with deep purpose.
I love that so much. And the things that you listed off there are so important for businesses. I mean, we're talking about one topic today, but health and wellness and all these different things are just so important for businesses to be successful. So very important work that you both are doing. So again, thank you for taking your time for joining us today. Michael, I'm going to go back to you, and I want to really focus on these 3 words because they can kind of become these buzzwords, if you will: diversity, equity, and inclusion. First, help us define them, and then really help us know the difference between these 3 words.
Absolutely. First, I want to just talk about when a lot of people say, diversity and inclusion, the first thing they think about is race relations, right? And there's so much more than that. D&I, you talk diversity, equity, inclusion. Let's start with diversity. It's just about making people unique in their own different ways, right? Different backgrounds, different personalities, different experiences, different beliefs. That's diversity. And when we talk about, equity, it's giving people what they need to succeed, right? Equity is promoting justice, is impartiality, it's just fairness, it's just equity. Inclusion, I like to look at inclusion like this, take it from a sense for going to a dance, right? Being invited to a dance, it is great, but if you're not invited to a dance, you're not really included. So I like to look at it that way when I talk about diversity and inclusion.
That's a very good analogy because you're talking to a ballet teacher here. Anything regarding dance, I'm all about. So it's about that invitation to the dance and really feeling included. Blake, go ahead and add some of your take on the definition of these words as well.
Well, it's really, so to your point, Michael, I do agree with you that everybody thinks about it as race related. But, I think about diversity and I think about when you get married, some of the greatest issues that you have is family origin. You know, it's like, well,
Yes.
we did it this way and you did it that way. I mean, so you begin to look at what's happening in a household and you're thinking about diverse point of view, right?
Yeah.
And then
Bringing
I
it
think
all
about
together.
equity, and I think I have a child who has special needs and my child needs to be taught a special way. So it's not the same size fits all. And then inclusion, I think, is my favorite. And I had a hard time in choosing a college when I was much younger because I didn't want to be part of a Greek system, because I didn't want somebody to tell me that I was good enough to belong or not good enough to belong. And I think that's feeling of, I want to feel like I'm accepted, and that not only are you going to invite me to the dance, but you may ask me to dance. And as
Come
Michael
on.
knows, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to dance, and I may sing the song. I may sing the song too. They just hand me the mic.
That's
But I
right.
just look at it and I think about it. This last year and a half has given us a lot to think about and really redefine things. And I hope that will help our communities grow, you know, in understanding it more so.
My kind of girl if we're singing and dancing. So I'm all in. I love it. And I have to say, my mother was born in Chile in South America. My dad is from South Dakota. You want to talk about cultural combination coming together in marriage. They had different languages, different cultures, talk about barriers. And I will say they did a fantastic job of, you know, raising us with both in mind, and we really appreciate that. And so I love this, and I get so excited about these things. So Blake, I'm going to stay with you. And so when you're talking about a business and maybe not a marriage, what kind of approach do businesses take when they start looking at DE&I?
Well, I think that the idea is that we do have to think about diversity from a broad lens. You're not just also looking at what the words are on the paper, which a lot of that is the responsibility of the candidate when they are submitting a resume and their cover letter to begin to start talking about what the variation has been. Because I always think about it from, what is my education, what is my experience, and then other things that maybe I've been exposed to that are outside and will help people think, you know, this might be the right candidate. I myself have been in the process of hiring for a position, and it's been a really nice experience to go through and think, okay, what is going to be that diverse candidate that is going to create that diverse lens that we need to a team of 8. So Michael and I, before we got on here, connected about DISC. And when I started my career in sort of a training and facilitation nature many years ago, starting a company, one of the companies said, you cannot work with us unless you use DISC, which is a personality profile system, because you need to know how we begin to start looking at each other and how we communicate. So we did the same with our own business. So we decided to start administering DISC profiles. And do you know what we learned? Is that we were hiring ourselves. I love this person. They get us. They know our culture. And we realized, well, this is going to fall flat on its face after a little bit of time, because we were not hiring people who thought differently, who were wired differently, who came from different backgrounds. And I think that that's so important for you to stretch yourself, even to that uncomfortable space, knowing this may be a person who would be perfect, but we're going to help them grow into this space. So I think it's an openness. I think it's a communication. And I think it's a self-awareness about yourself to then begin to identify what that diversity might be needed in order to come in and make your company that much more successful.
Wow, that is so good. I need to do this DISC. I haven't done it. I've done the Enneagram. I'm a 3, the whole performer behind the mask, always smiling, blah, blah, blah. But I love it because it really helped me in marriage. It helped me in everything, because how you treat someone, they may not be like you. And I never thought about, we tend to gravitate toward people that are like us, but then you're going to have a whole room of people like you. Yep. So diversity can be when you reach outside of that and get, I love the way you said, just wire differently. That's a lot of diversity, because now you're going to have different ways of thinking. Michael, let's hear from you as far as a business. What kind of advice would you give when it comes to DE&I?
When I talk about businesses and the advice that I give about D&I, I come from a little different perspective, because I want to talk about hire skill, right? And if you think about hiring skill first, because we also know that the EOC have laws in place that protect, diversity, inclusion, race, disabilities. However, when we hire skill first, we want to make sure that we're going to the locations where we can seek diverse skill talent, and we can get those perspectives. So once, as a hiring manager, we bring those employees across our footprint. Now, what if we had, so we talked about DISC. what if we had a hiring manager or HR professional that wasn't really aware about diversity and inclusion and what that looked like? So, and across the board, they can hire people that they probably know, like, and trust, that, or they connected with, right? And it's likability. But if you turn around and look at your organization and say, wow, my organization is not diverse, are we going after highly qualified, skilled talent that represent our organization? So it's a little education piece of the power awareness. And what I like to provide, what's different about me, I offer what we call ASAT. It's another seat at the table. It's a diversity inclusion program. And we talk about 4 things: the power of awareness, right? And we identify, how do people think? Are they champions? Are they pioneers? Are they influencers? And of course, the hesitators and the obstructors. So I like to bring that awareness piece. So if you're a hiring manager or you're HR professional and you bring those employees in, are we going after that top qualified talent, diversity across the board?
That's really challenging and good, because you can't use that excuse, well, there's just nobody that applied. Right. Sorry, we're all look the same. Nobody else applied. It's a little bit of an excuse because of what you said about going after that. Very good. So I'm going to stick with you, Michael, and talk about, now you have the employees and you've got good employees. How do we deal with retention when it comes to DE&I? How do we keep them?
Yeah. It's just making them feel included. Because you can have an amazing employee working for an amazing organization, but if they don't feel included, you can have diverse, but they don't feel included, or if they don't feel heard, they're not going to stay. They're going to go somewhere else, or another organization. Allow them to have a voice, because you think about diversity across the board. We're all different. We all have disabilities. There's something different about everybody. No matter your race, color, gender, disability elements, everybody wants to be heard and seen. And if you have an employee at any level, if they're heard and seen, they will stick and stay.
Boy, that is some great advice. When I was in TV news, I was told I was the first Hispanic on camera. Yep. And when we hired the second Hispanic, she said she enjoyed seeing me because she knew that the TV station was open to Hispanics. Yeah, and I thought, wow, I didn't even think about that. But they want to see people that are like them, and I think it made her feel included.
Yeah, there. Trailblazer.
So Blake, yeah, well, it worked out, which was great. I loved hearing that. It made me feel very good. So, Blake, kind of that same question to you about retention, and what is the best advice you can give when it comes to keeping good employees?
Well, I really am a believer that culture is rooted in your values as an organization, and values cannot just be these words that you put in a frame or on the wall, that they have to be lived and breathed and felt through actions. I just was visiting with a wonderful company based in Kansas City, and they're doing a lot of great conversations where somebody who may be transgender is hosting a conversation, and they're giving people grace and the freedom to ask those questions like, I don't want to be judged by this question, but I don't understand. And I don't feel like right now I have a place where I can go to learn. Because as much as we are different, it's wonderful to have those conversations, to learn that there are things about us that are alike. And that maybe it's our passion for the work that we're doing and the mission of the organization, or maybe it's because we both grew up in the same town or in the same state or had similar experiences growing up. And I wanted to just give such a kudos to this company for bringing this as a cultural experience, because it's diversity and equity and inclusion is one of their values that goes along with trust and all of the other myriad of values that they have. But to say, we're not going to just put this up here, but we want you to begin to live and breathe it to see how it can make us a better organization as we move forward. And they're having a lot of their top tier leaders participate. It's not just a certain level. It is being exemplified, which I think in many cases, it has to start at the top, but you also want to see it at the bottom, that there be interest and curiosity to say, this is what we're doing, and everybody is welcome. And so that would probably be my lens, is thinking about that culture and values, and how do you make those values live in a way that makes people, to Michael's point, feel like they are included and that they belong, because that's how we're going to retain them.
And that's so good, because a lot of places are getting into the values and things, but if it's just on the wall, it is not doing any good. And so to live it, to breathe it, to have it be alive in the company. So there's going to be some business leaders and some owners of companies that say, oh, that's great. But let's talk about the bottom line, because it's still a business. You still got to have good ROI. What is the return on investment when we're talking about DE&I? Blake, I'm going to go to you first.
Well, I think if you have happy employees, if they feel like they belong and they're in the boat and everybody's rowing the same direction, I think this is a no-brainer. Especially if you go back to what Michael was saying, is that you're hiring skilled employees. I mean, to me, if you start looking at that, you actually are creating a wonderful environment for people to grow and thrive and find a career someplace. And that bottom line, I think that if that will happen. Now, there's obviously intentionality in what you have to do. But I think if you go around doing those things that are important and people feel like, first of all, they are people and that they're being treated right and they're being treated fairly and that they feel like they belong and they have purpose in the work they're doing every day, that bottom line, I would be shocked if it were not taking care of itself.
Boy, that's so good. Michael, and to you as well. Talk to us about bottom line and ROI.
Absolutely. You talk about the bottom line, and Blake, you hit the nail on the head. I like to look at it this way. In order for us to understand the bottom line, let's look at what if we don't have a D&I initiative in place? What if we don't have diversity and inclusion inside of our organization? And before we can understand the ROI, we have to understand the cost of not implementing it. You see, 98% of C-suite level executives, they think employees in their organization are inclusive, but only 80% of that, right? Only 80% of that of employees they feel they're included. Now you think about that. That's a 20% perception gap. And in that 20% perception gap, that would cost $1 trillion across that. So it's being said that studies have shown that the drivers are more forced to be more profitable organizations by focusing on diversity and inclusion. So by not having a diverse inclusion workforce, it will cost companies greatly. So it just behooves them to make sure they have it in place.
Those are some very eye-opening numbers and stats where there is a disconnect somewhere happening, perception versus reality. So thank you for sharing that. That is just gold for people to take back to their companies and really try to implement this. So Michael, we know that change is very hard. And so I want to talk to you about when decisions are made. How do you make sure all voices are heard, even if it may not be what that voice was pushing for, but to still make them feel included in that decision?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Just being aware, giving an employee a place to bring their entire self. And when people feel they can bring their entire self to an office or to work and have a seat at the table and freely share without any reprimands, without any biases, it's gold magic happens when any employee, any organization, and somebody can sit at the table and say, hey, this is what I got on my heart. Even if you don't agree, you don't have to agree, but you can listen. So first, whoever's on the other side receiving, listen first, try to understand, and you don't have to have a response, but try to seek common ground.
I feel like you are describing the word humility, and we need humble leaders out there to not be know-it-alls or think they know all the answers, to really be listening to everybody that's at the table, everyone that has a seat at the table. And so, Blake, I want to turn to you when it comes to implementation. So let's say somebody's listening to this and has no DE&I program, or they have one, but they want to strengthen it. What are the kind of actual steps to take to make that happen?
Well, I can think about it from a couple of different lenses. I can look at it from a broader lens of, gosh, we don't have this, but what do our employees want? I would never in a million years go and assume what a team of employees would want until I heard, because we all know that you start asking them and you will see the themes, whether it's a written survey, whether it's a survey where you do A, B, C, D, you're going to go, wow, I had no idea. And to me, that's where you get the buy-in, because then you come back and you say, this is what we learned from you. We may have to do it in a phased approach because there's a lot that you're wanting, but we're going to start here and this is where we're going to move. And thank you so much for your input, because this plan or this program wouldn't exist without you. So that's how I think about it from the lens of a bigger company. I think about it from a team, from the perspective of even creating ground rules or creating norms, and how we as a team are going to work together. And I've always appreciated this, because as a leader, sometimes it's always It's hard to be the one to always have to be the person to keep everybody accountable and to have to impress upon people, especially if we start seeing behaviors because we're highly stressed because we're trying to meet a deadline or things are not going the way we want them to go. And I love norms and ground rules where we sit as a team. It's a dynamic document. We are always updating it based on what we're experiencing. But to me, we post it wherever we typically meet as a team, and everybody holds each other accountable. It's not just the leader holding everybody accountable. It's a nice reminder to say, hey, how about we take a 5-minute break? This is some pretty heavy discussion, and I can hear tones. Why don't we take a break and come back so everybody has a breather, rather than the leader having to say, oh, wow, there's sparks and fireworks and all kinds of things happening here. This is not the kind of behavior that we accept, within this culture. It's a way for everybody to hold each other accountable and to support one another more than anything. Support one another. So those are two different angles, kind of like a larger organization, but then how do we want to treat each other? And to me, that's a lens to DE&I. It's feeling, diverse, accepting diverse point of view, making people feel like they belong and that they're given the tools they need in order to be successful.
I love that accountability angle. I just think that's so important, whether you're a leader or not. I mean, just to be accountable to yourself and to the company as well. Michael, I kind of want to give you that same opportunity when it comes to implementation. Maybe you're seeing this and this is all foreign and new to you, and you go, gosh, I got to do that. What's your advice for how to start?
Yeah, the first thing to implement any type of D&I program is to realize, hey, we need to implement it. We need to make sure we have something in place across the board in our organization. And I will look at, self-awareness, right? And realize there's emotional intelligence and how's that defined, right? So when I say self-awareness, the ability to identify your own emotions and how they affect your organization. And what I do personally, of course, I have a seat at the table and we bring in organizations and it's called the Pioneer. And I give, it's not even an assessment, it's a training. And that training goes inside to talk to top level CEOs or HR professionals. And we say, who is the pioneers of your organization? The first thing for anything is the power of awareness. If you don't have awareness or how you self-identify, you can have an amazing D&I program and the people sitting at the table making decisions are obstructors. What's an obstructor? That's somebody that says, we don't have a problem. There's no diversity and inclusion. We don't need diversity and inclusion. So the very thing you need is awareness, right? So when I bring the foot forward, I look at awareness. Who's your pioneers inside your organization? The pioneers, they're going to create change. They're going to lead the charge. They're going to say, you know what? I see a problem. I need to see change. What can we do to make it happen? Then you have your champions, right? You've got champions inside organizations. Then you have your influencers. Your influencers, I like to say, we talk about this perspective, they're relational. They're going to make connections and make things happen. If you want to move the ball forward and go inside organizations, identify your influencers of your organizations. And of course, we also know we have hesitators and obstructors. That doesn't mean anything or wrong with a hesitator. A hesitator just may say, you know what? I know there's a problem, but I'm going to wait and see what everybody else does. You know what? But it's still allowing everybody to bring their full self to the table, right? So when you want to implement something inside an organization, come with the power of awareness, have communication and collaboration skills, and identify the people at the table and move the ball forward.
So good. And I love that back to everybody has different skill sets. Everybody has different gifting. Yep. And kind of that teaching side of it too is a reminder that you're not always going to get it right. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. Oh. And so you really want to focus on the teaching and training. Is that right?
Oh, come on. Absolutely. And it's okay to get it wrong, right? If you get it wrong, don't be so hard on yourself. We're not perfect, right? Have some grace, right? Because when you're talking about a topic such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, sometimes you're going to hurt feelings because somebody may you bring your full self to the table and somebody may say things that somebody else may not agree. Full disclosure, it's okay to disagree, but let's not stay in the same place. Let's move the ball forward. And if I get it wrong, what did I get wrong? How can we change? And where do we go from here?
Wow, very good. We're going to church today. We've got humility. We've got grace. This has been wonderful. So, amen to all of that.
Hey, it's all about I've worked on myself enough. So
See, So Blake, kind of the same question there with regard to teaching and training and that they're not always going to get it right.
Well, I think I encourage the fact that you don't always get it right. Because if you're always getting it right, you're not trying new things. I mean, you're not helping people really think differently. Again, it's sort of navel gazing, in my opinion, if that is what the case is. And so I think we have to learn how to show respect to one another and listen, to Michael's point, and be open to a different point of view. And then that forgiveness has to come in, but you have to know how to have those conversations so they don't create negative energy. It's more of a positive energy of, okay, I hadn't thought about it that way. And I don't agree with all of it, but there's a part of that I agree with. And it's helping people listen and not just hear. In my opinion, it's really helping people understand how to have those conversations. And sometimes we have to give them the language in that teaching. We have to give them the language to know how to enter into that. No different than in a conversation of conflict or a conversation we think you can have conflict, how we can help our team members learn how to go into those conversations, because nobody wants a conversation like that. But there are some incredible tools to help people enter into those conversations so that we get to a better place at the end than going and letting emotions get in the way and letting hard feelings get in the way. And then if you have grace, we also need to make sure that there's some forgiveness. So when people do approach it wrong, that we forgive them and know that they are fallible, just like all of us, and that we want to be a good team member to them, because in the same situation, we would want the same if something were to happen to us and we were to approach it wrong. So,
come on,
so
Blake.
Well said.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that's right.
That's great.
The preaching continues.
Come
now.
on.
And I'm gonna quote you on that, because you said, if you're always getting it right, you're not trying new things. I love that advice right there. So good. So I want to get this in before we go. Some of these topics can be super sensitive, hard to talk about, emotional to talk about. Blake, I'm going to start with you. How do you kind of encourage the employees, the supervisors, everybody at every level to be open and to open up on these really tough topics?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about just from a programmatic perspective, and how if you're going to want your culture to live and breathe, you present these opportunities. And if you're doing that, while there can't be 100% preparation to where you control everything, but you do set it up in a way that is going to allow those conversations to be held, to where people know this is the program they may be participating in, and it's going to be a 1-hour Zoom, or we're going to put our team together and you're welcome to join and have a cup of coffee and a donut when everybody can come together like we want them to do, and to really understand what are we trying to accomplish in doing this? What is its purpose? And how do we want you to participate? And just so that there's, I don't want to say guardrails that are so tight that people don't feel like they can really participate in their whole selves, but it does give people an understanding of, oh, this is why we're doing this. And this is what we're hoping, the outputs that which we hope to get from this experience. And this is how I can participate as somebody who has been invited to have a seat at the table. So that would just be one idea that I would have, that they're to provide a little bit of that structure, because otherwise it's not going to just happen all on its own. And I think it's to the point of whether it's the HR team or the leadership team, depending upon the size of your company, to create these moments to happen. So there's some learning.
Boy, so well said. Such great advice. Michael, same question to you when we're talking about these tough topics and getting people to open up.
Yeah, and I wish I could just say what she said, what Blake said, because she said it so perfectly. One thing I would encourage is encourage the topic. Let your employees know it's okay to have the conversation, because there will be tough conversations, and they have a voice. It may not, what they may say may not get the distance, it may not be resolved, but let them know they do have a voice. And if employees have a hard time communicating, what do I say? Provide training, provide proper training, like Blake said, at the top level, all the way down through the organization. Because leadership, we like to say inside of John Maxwell Team, everything rises and falls on leadership, right? So at the highest level, start with the training and let the employees know that, hey, it's okay. Bring your full self, provide that training across the board, provide how to have those difficult conversations. When they're having those conversations and they have conflict, how do I navigate that conflict? How do I facilitate that conversation? And how do I move that ball forward? And there's a lot of that, and it starts, and I always go back, Christina, to awareness. I always go back to the power of awareness, because if that employee bringing their full self is not aware of the bias of the blind spot they have, they're coming to the table to have a conversation with the same bias to create more issues than healing, right? So if they don't have awareness about themselves, but want to have a conversation about diversity and inclusion, they're causing more problems than there are solutions. So it's all about proper training, proper education, the power of awareness, and how to proper facilitate the conversation so you can move the ball forward.
And I always love it.
Yes.
I always love it. I love it when a leader will ask the question that really makes them human, where everybody goes, I cannot believe they asked that question, but gosh, I wanted to ask that question so bad. And I think it takes a leader to really, back to humility, to make themselves like, okay, I'm sitting here with you and I have some of these same questions. So I'm going to ask a question that some of you may not be willing to ask, but I want to know what the answer is, because I know the rest of you are thinking the same thing, or I'm hoping that this is something you want an answer to. So I think we also have to look to our leadership to lead in that way sometimes.
And to really to encourage everyone to not be offended, but to work through it. And that's the kind of company that you work for.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? You said it so great. Do not be offended, right? Because sometimes when we come to the table, let's come to the table open, ready to learn and listen. Because if you come to the table with your guard up, ready to be offended, you will get offended.
Because
it's a tough
conversation. It's like you're planning on it.
Exactly. You can't wait to be offended. But if you come
you're setting
yourself up. But if you come to the table ready to learn, move the ball forward, hey, it's an open conversation. And I always like to say, leaders go first.
Wow, that's why they are the leaders. So I have been so inspired. I am so excited about everything that you guys have shared. I want to give you a quick one last words of advice regarding this topic. Blake, I'm going to start with you.
I would just say to be open. As a leader, I would say be very open and be willing to listen to what your employees are saying, because I feel like in all of the focus groups that I have done, particularly in this space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, a lot of the folks that are participating come from very diverse backgrounds, and they're like, we have been heard a lot, but there's no action, and we are ready for something. We're ready for action. And so as leaders, I feel like we have to be very open to hearing what our people are saying, and then you've got to take action on it, because otherwise your people are going to leave your organization. Excellent
advice. Michael, over to you.
Oh, absolutely. What she said. So other than that, the only advice I would give to any organization or organizations I've been a part of, they've been represented in a positive way, making things happen all the way down. So any business or any employee that don't have a diversity and inclusion program, for any CEOs or high level HR professionals, listen what the employees are saying. Listen to the things that's not being said, right? Keep your eyes open, because when the employees communicate, there are some communications that you may hear, but that's not really been said. So every organization have a pulse. Every organization have a culture. What does that culture look like? If we take a hard look inside the organization, what's being said and what's not being said? Look across the table. And if everybody across the table look the same as you, it's not diverse. It's not
Michael,
hard. It's not diverse.
I cannot thank you guys enough. You were so insightful, encouraging, and inspirational, really. Like I said, we went to church today, so thank you very much for that. We are preaching, and I got to say amen, because you guys, thank you. You have a lot of insight, and I hope everybody on here today learned something and has some takeaways. So I thank you very much for your time. I have some good news. Today's conversation doesn't end here. You can find bonus content from today's episode on our blog and social channels. The links are in the episode description. Thank you for joining us for Connecting Business. Be sure to check out all the episodes at kineticbusiness.com/connectingbusiness. Did you love the episode? Have a topic or guest idea? Email us at connectingbusiness@windstream.com. We look forward to sharing more stories with you. Until next time, stay connected.